but I also left another piece of scrap paper if you want it on your table. But you now have 5 minutes to make a presentation. Any team member may speak one at a time. I remind you when they have 3 minutes and 1 minute left. Your time begins now.
Okay, thank you, moderator, for the extra paper and everything else. We want to speak about central tension, introducing this central tension that exists in our approach, or that we're trying to resolve with our approach. Essentially, in a democracy, when there is a fair process and there is the consent of the governed, there is a duty to uphold the principles of that democratic system. That is the best solution that we see to balance the issue of laws that can be made in a majoritarian way that are unjust towards a minority against that necessity to agree to abide by those laws that are democratically decided. That is the solution to that tension in our view. It's simply to try to always uphold the principles that govern a democratic society. And then you can have diversity of opinion within that society without straying outside of the actual norms of democracy. And that can include civil disobedience. What it cannot include is violence. And that is a key distinction we want to make between illegitimate and legitimate civil disobedience. Violating an unjust law in a democracy requires that you are non-violent, first of all, and then there is a second requirement that Felicia will get into.
Thank you, Julian. We also want to state that it is imperative that all other legal avenues of protest and political change have been exhausted first. This includes voting, peaceful assembly, striking, and then resorting to civil disobedience as a last option. And we also want to talk about the fact that people must be willing to accept the consequences of their actions as it brings weight to their causes, which we will further on.
Thank you, Felicia. We'd also like to expand this to not just democracies, but non-democracies as well, and about how even in non-democracies, peaceful civil disobedience is still a viable option as well as a commendable one. One need only look at examples such as Nelson Mandela or Mahatma Gandhi, both of who used peaceful means to achieve their goals in societies that were not democratic, especially for them as people of color in colonies in apartheid South Africa. However, in non-democracies, sometimes violence is the only way. For example, the French Revolution of 1789. The peasants had to take up arms and storm the Bastille in order to gain actual democratic rights in their society. However, it was still, in our opinion, in our discussions, it was still commendable for Nelson Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi to take up these non-violent ways before resorting to their, instead of resorting to violence such as the 1789 revolution.
And to clarify really quickly, unlike France before the revolution, or really during the revolution, due process exists in a democratic society. That's one of the requirements for a society to be democratic. And so that is what allows someone to accept the consequences in a way that won't result in them getting executed for disobeying a law. And I'd like to pass it on.
Thank you so much, Julian. In our conversations, we talked a lot, as you could see with Uday, we talked a lot about different examples of civil disobedience throughout history. We discovered this woman named Claudette Colvin, who inspired Rosa Parks' advocacy for Black rights. She noticed, she found and saw and was affected by segregation, and she saw that it was extremely unjust, and she sat in the back of the bus. She started the movement that Rosa Parks was inspired by, and she caused meaningful change. She inspired Rosa Parks, who uplifted her message. Therefore, it is extremely important that we are recognizing that some acts of civil disobedience can create change, and this just shows the power of youth in history. And I will pass it off to Jessalyn.
Thank you, Sarah. So, as Julian mentioned, the moral status of civil disobedience in democracies, the democracy part is the fundamental of our case. It's the key point. And we all have a duty to uphold the principles of the system. So that means violence is unjustifiable in civil disobedience in a democracy, whereas Uday stated how violence might actually be necessary in a non-democracy. Then Felicia mentioned how civil disobedience is kind of like a last-ditch resort. all other legal avenues must be exhausted in order for civil disobedience to be morally justifiable. Also, the weight that civil disobedience holds, the weight of accepting your consequences, really brings about meaningful change, as Sarah elaborated on. Thank you.
Thank you, Team B.